Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell special called Mayor and City Council meeting for August 29th, 2022. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. After this meeting, we will have Mayor and Council open forum, which we will begin with by honoring Council Member Marcelo Zapata, and then we will continue with open mic. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Mortland, Councilmember Michael Palermo, and Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. I'd also like to acknowledge tonight that we have State of Georgia House of Representative Mary Robichaud in attendance with us, as well as numerous candidates running for office here in November, both from the Democratic and Republican side of the aisle, which is a great representation of Roswell. So tonight's a special night. We have two meetings. And I'd like now to turn over our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening to everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings, and the Mayor can call special called Mayor and Council meetings as needed. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. And this is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of these city council meetings are to hear directly from residents on the items listed on the agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for the mayor and council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Citizens are at the top of our organizational chart, and therefore it is imperative for the mayor and council to hear from citizens in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an item, I would certainly ask that you fill out a comment card, which are located at the back of the room and at the podium, in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask, of course, that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. I would encourage those in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage you to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city of Roswell. There are a number of events scheduled upcoming in the city, which the mayor may speak about a little bit later, which promote community physical activity and leisure as we make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. You always do such a fantastic job of that introduction. This evening, we are very privileged to have from Roswell Presbyterian Church, Reverend Lindsay Slocum, to lead us in the invocation of moment of silence. Reverend Slocum, thank you.
Thank you. Today is such a good day, right? We get to come together and celebrate a lot of really important things today, and we give thanks for that. But we also know that today there are some things that are harder, and I understand we're going to acknowledge those tonight as well. And so it's important then on a day like today with things to celebrate, but also things that are heavy on our hearts, it's important for the community to be together. So how appropriate then that we are gathered together tonight. So let's go to God in prayer. Holy God, we come before you humbly and gratefully. Lord, for so many things that are going on, for these things in our community that we get to celebrate, for these amazing people who work hard, who are committed to serving your people and your community, that our lives are better because we have gotten to celebrate with them, that we have been benefited from their labor and from their work and the good things that you have done. So God, we give you thanks. But Lord, at the same time, we know there are places where our hearts are tender, places where our community is hurting. Lord, griefs that we need to lift to you. And so we pray that not only would you bear our burdens there, but that you would remind us of this community that is gathered together, that we would be able to share in one another's burdens and claim hope, Lord, on behalf of one another. So in all of these things, Lord, we pray that you would continue to be at work, that you would continue to call this community together, that we would serve one another faithfully, Lord, and enjoy one another joyfully. Lord, be here with us tonight. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Slocum, very much for doing that. Don't sit down, because I'm going to get you right back up. I just me, because I got to get this silly microphone. At this time, I'd like to call our friend Jimmy Moore, who's a member of the Great Roswell Rotary Club, to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
What a good friend of mine. Isn't it a great day to be alive in Roswell, Georgia? Want to thank our great community where we can honor veterans and we can honor our first responders. Join me in the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jimmy. Well, next on the agenda is the mayor's report. And the first item is a reading of a proclamation for the esteemed veteran of Roswell. This award goes to Technical Sergeant Russell Eugene Fawcett. At this time, I'd like to call Technical Sergeant Russell Eugene Fawcett forward for our proclamation. Do you mind if I sit next to you?
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I'll read better sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. Technical Sergeant Russell Eugene Fawcett, World War II, esteemed veteran. Whereas on December 16th, 1924, Russell Eugene Fawcett was born in Kokomo, Indiana, in the family farmhouse. Russell graduated high school in 1942 and was inducted to the United States Army on March 18, 1943. Russell received basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, as part of the newly activated 75th Infantry Division, and was assigned to field artillery, where he soon became a gunner on the 105mm howitzers and was promoted to corporal. At the end of maneuvers training in Shreveport, Louisiana, the division was transported by rail to Camp Breckinridge in Kentucky. In August 1944, all the private first-class soldiers were sent to Europe as replacements after the invasion of D-Day in France. Russell joined the 75th Division and went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for 4 weeks of paratrooper training. The training entailed field artillery pieces and ammunition would be dropped from the planes along with the airborne soldiers, and the equipment would be assembled upon landing. And whereas at the completion of airborne training, Corporal Fawcett's military orders were to board a train for destinations unknown. However, Russell recalls the band played "California, Here I Come" as the train departed. The troops rode in boxcars retrofitted to be mobile barracks and arrived in Fort Ord, California, where they disembarked on a troop ship for the Pacific on a 30-day journey. During this time, the ship was traveling without escort, and they zigzagged across the Pacific to avoid Japanese submarines, and later arriving in Hollandia, New Guinea in January 1945. And whereas upon arriving in New Guinea, Corporal Fawcett was deployed on Dutch ship to Luzon, Philippines, and arrived on January 16, 1945. He was assigned as a gunner to the 674th Parachute Field Artillery Battalion in support of the infantry as it moved into Manila. After Manila was secured, The unit moved south and cleared many strong Japanese positions from southern Luzon. That detail included a joint paratroop and glider operation, the only combat glider operation in the Pacific Theater. The area of operations had no defined front lines and was subjected to sniper fire and sporadic attacks. And whereas in May 1945, the 674th Field Artillery Unit was loaded onto C-47s and taken to Okinawa and was assumed to be headed for the invasion of Japan. Okinawa had been the scene of intense fighting and largely destroyed, and the island was later declared as secured on June 22nd, 1945. While Corporal Fawcett was in Okinawa, the atomic bombs were deployed, and Japan surrendered. Russell was assigned to the occupation of Japan and witnessed the boarding of American prisoner of war soldiers onto planes to head back home to the United States. He observed the Japanese people evolve from fearing the American occupiers to welcoming the friendly and supportive treatment by the Americans. Corporal Fawcett spent his 21st birthday in Tokyo, and 4 decades later, in 1985, he spent his 61st birthday taking in the moment and recognizing the city's beauty and people before him. And whereas on February 13th, 1946, Technical Sergeant Russell Eugene Fawcett was honorably discharged, and the United States Army bestowed the following medals: American Theater Ribbon, Good Conduct Medal, Asiatic Pacific Ribbon with 2 Bronze Stars, Philippine Liberation Ribbon with 1 Bronze Star, and the Victory Medal, World War II. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Technical Sergeant Russell Eugene Fawcett, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who have served in the United States Armed Forces.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's a great honor to be recognized as I have been tonight. I'd like to introduce my family, largest farmer here. Would you stand, please? Thank you. Thank you. The biggest thing that you normally do, you really don't talk about it from World War II. The biggest part of we veterans really never said a whole lot about our war experience until Tom Goff's book, I think, kind of brought everyone out to where if the experiences was going to be noted, they would have to speak out. And I guess the most memorial thing that affected me most, as we were selected to go into Japan before the armistice was signed, and we were shifted up to Okinawa, and we now, being a paratrooper, we jumped out of the C-47s, and they couldn't make a round trip to Yokohama and back. The Japanese had agreed to have advanced troops to come in, and we were selected among that group. C-47 couldn't make the round trip, so they brought in passenger planes from the U.S. and settled us in with the Japanese Army fully mobilized at that time. And they fortunately did everything that they were asked to do. But the big thing that you really don't want to talk about it is the prisoners of war that had been taken at Corregidor, loaded on the same planes, and they were just here on Earth. Actually, they in such a pitiful sight. It's something that you really don't. I've said very little about it, and I think it's the least said, the better. But those are the people we should really honor. Those that gave their lives for our country during that time. Thank you, and God bless USA.
So, Joe, you can stay up. Mr. Fawcett, thank you. Greg, are you here? Is your grandson Greg here? Greg, come join us, please, sir. So will you allow us to, I know everybody wants to take a picture with you, so I think, Karen, are you ready? One more hand for, one of Oh my God, I forgot the proclamation. Here, Dad, I'll get it. Well, it is obviously hard to follow that in any stretch of the imagination. Just want to bring up that the final items on the mayor's report tonight is some upcoming events that I'd like to make all residents aware of. The first event is Music on the Hill, which will be on Friday, September the 9th, on the City Hall grounds from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. The entertainment will be Geek Squad, which includes music from Motown and jazz to funk and hip-hop. This is the last chance to relax and unwind on the grounds of City Hall for the 22 season. And what could be better? It is free. Then on Sunday, September the 11th, is Riverside Ramble, which is at the Riverside Park stage from 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Please enjoy celebrating Grandparents' Day while enjoying a free concert on the lawn. This event features the Roswell Ramblers, New Horizon, and jazz bands. Don't forget your picnic basket and chairs. The last event that I will, well, it's actually two more, sorry. We have the artist exhibit, Female Fatale, the works by Craig Ford. It runs from September 9th to September 30th at the Roswell Visual Arts Center. The opening reception is on September the 9th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The exhibit hours are Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I also want to mention that next week on Tuesday, September the 6th, we'll be sponsoring another poll worker recruitment fair from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. here at City Hall in room 220 with the Fulton County Elections Office. This fair is to help find residents who are interested in becoming trained to work the polls on Election Day or during early voting. Fulton County will provide information on training, responsibilities, time commitment, and compensation. We have flyers in the back and information on our website. I'd also like to mention that we have two very special announcements regarding employees with the city. The first one is Rick Mahoney, our IT application specialist, and his wife Tiffany welcomed their first little boy, Sebastian Anea Mahoney, yesterday. So we want to congratulate them. Also earlier this month, Jonathan Cupsey, our communications specialist, and his wife Kelly welcomed their first little boy, Wells Alexander. Wells has a big sister, Adelaide, who will be 5.5, and she'll be playing a big role as Mommy's helper. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Hills for a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I have some sad news to share this evening. Roswell High School has suffered a loss in our community. Mr. Alex Chernovsky, one of the teachers, social studies and history teacher, age 48, passed away this weekend. He was wildly loved by the students and madly loved by his colleagues. He started working at Roswell High School at age 22, so about 24 plus years he's been there and has just been an institution for Roswell High. He's a former lacrosse teacher, and he's a champion in our community, bringing positivity by hosting an ALS fundraiser in the name of Sue Shear, a former coach also at Roswell High School that is no longer with us. So I just beseech you all this evening to lift up the community of Roswell High, those around, those that knew Mr. Chernovsky. He was a huge lover of history and brought that to life for our kids. That's like one of the toughest subjects to teach and make it stick. So I just ask you to lift him up in prayer, his family up in prayer, and I love that we've got a baby that's being announced tonight and one on the way, and it just proves that God goes from life to death and death to life. So I just ask for your prayers on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills, and yes, it is a loss for our city today. That concludes the mayor's report. So next on the agenda is the Finance Department. Councilmember Hall, will you read the first item, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. First item on the Finance Department agenda is the approval of an ordinance to adopt a millage rate of 4.463 for fiscal year 2023. This is the first reading and will be presented by Director Luckett.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson, City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to adopt the millage rate. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell wish to establish a millage rate of 4.463. The millage rate has a component of 4.363 mills for the general fund, operating and capital improvements budget, and a component of 0.100 mills for servicing bonded indebtedness. If approved, this will be the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Councilmember Hall, would you call Mr. Luckett, please?
Mr. Luckett, if you would please present.
Good evening, everyone. This is the first reading of our FY23 millage rate ordinance. I wanted to start by providing a little bit of background information. As you might remember, the FY23 budget was adopted by the mayor and council back on June 13th. We received a preliminary digest from Fulton County on July 6th, and at our last committee meeting on August 9th, we received feedback from the committee to move forward with the millage rate adoption process by advertising the rollback millage rate. So there'll be two hearings as part of the millage rate adoption process. Obviously, the first one is tonight, and our second reading of the millage rate ordinance will be Monday, September 12th at the mayor and council meeting starting at 7 p.m. Before we get into the heart of the presentation, I wanted to take a minute just to provide a little bit of background on what a millage rate is for those that may not be aware. This is an infographic put together by our Community Relations Department. But essentially, the millage rate is just our property tax rate. The mill is equal to $1 for every $1,000 of a property's assessed value. And so on the right there, you see an example, a fair market value property that has a fair market value of $250,000, has an assessed value of $100,000. And then $100,000 at 1 mil would be the equivalent of $100 in property taxes. Speaking of millage rates, there are actually 3 different millage rates that are present on our residents' property tax bills. One is from Fulton County Schools, one from Fulton County, and one from the city of Roswell. So we have an example here on the bottom of the screen. This is based on the rates from last year, 2021. So this is for an average Roswell home of $450,000 market value, so that would be $180,000 in assessed value. So for Fulton County Schools, that represents 55% of the total tax bill. Fulton County is about 30% of the total tax bill, and then the city of Roswell represents about 15% of the total tax bill. So as I mentioned, we are here this evening to present the proposed millage rate for FY 2023, and the proposed millage rate is actually a reduction from FY 2022. So on the table that you see on the screen, you can see that our millage rate has 2 basic components. One is maintenance and operations. The maintenance and operations rate goes to pay for basic city services, such as public safety, rec and parks, and our transportation department, just to name a few. And then our debt service portion of our millage rate goes to pay for the city's general obligation debt. And because the city is getting close to paying off the current general obligation bond debt, you can see that rate is pretty low. So in FY 2022, you can see the rate for the M&O portion was 4.618, 0.1 for our debt service, for a total millage rate of 4.718. In FY 2023, the direction received from the mayor and council was to move forward with a rollback millage rate. And I'll mention what that means in just a moment. But so for FY 2023, that includes a maintenance and operations rate of 4.363 and a continuation of our debt service rate of 0.1 for a total millage rate of 4.463. So that represents a reduction in the millage rate of 0.255 mils, which overall is a 5.4% reduction in the millage rate. So as I mentioned, the FY 23 proposed rate does represent the rollback rate, and we talked a little bit about this at committee, but essentially the rollback millage rate is last year's millage rate less the millage equivalent of any inflationary increases in a property's value. So it's intended to eliminate any inflationary increases that might be seen in a property's value. So in Roswell, this millage rate reduction is the equivalent of about $45.90 in savings on an average Roswell home. This chart gives you a 10-year history of the millage rate in the city of Roswell. You can see we've broken it down by the M&O portion and the debt service portion. You can see FY 2023 there, the rate that we just spoke of 4.463. Overall, you can see that Roswell's millage rate has dropped by nearly 1 mil, or 18%, since FY 2018. That's equivalent of approximately $180 in annual savings for the average home in Roswell. Next chart gives you a comparison of the city of Roswell compared to the other North Fulton cities. You can see here that the proposed rate for the city of Roswell is the second lowest rate among the North Fulton cities, both in terms of M&O as well as the overall millage rate. The next portion of the presentation is to provide an update on the most recent property tax digest numbers that we've received from Fulton County. So you can see here that year over year, our digest has grown from $6.5 billion to $7.3 billion. This represents the assessed value, so the 40% of market value. That's an $805 million increase in value, about 12.3% overall. When we break that down between residential, commercial, and other, you can see that the residential values increased by 15.5%. Our commercial values increased by 4.5%, and our other category decreased by about 5.5%. Of that $805 million, about $705 million of that is related to increases in market value, and about $100 million of that is related to new construction in the city of Roswell. Next slide gives you a breakdown of the gross digest by type. So this is residential, commercial, and other, and you can see that our residential portion has increased to 75%, commercial has decreased to 23%, and the other has decreased to 2%. Homestead exemptions, these are the four homestead exemptions offered in the city of Roswell. You can see that the first three are related to our seniors, and so age 65 and over qualify for a $2,000 exemption. Age 65 and over with income restriction is $20,000, and the disabled veterans, we do recognize that exemption. That is $85,000. When we add in the floating exemption, that totals all homestead exemptions to $1.1 billion, which is the equivalent of about $5.1 million in tax savings for residents, or an average of $177 per household. This graphic just kind of explains the floating homestead exemption. You can see that the various values that we are familiar with. So market value is at $450,000. That's the average Roswell home. 40% of that is $180,000. And then you can see that the floating homestead exemption covers the difference between our base value, which varies by home, and the overall assessed value for that particular property. In terms of revenue, you can see that the FY23 budget, we anticipated bringing in $27.43 million. Based on this millage rate and the new digest, we are anticipating or estimating about $26.96 million. In the general fund, that's a reduction of about $600,000 from what was adopted in the most recent budget. So adopting the rollback millage rate will result in approximately $600,000 in less revenue. Mayor and council planning for this set aside approximately $570,000 in fund balance to allow for the adoption of the rollback rate. So it's a small gap of about $30,000 that we'll need to make up, and we're recommending that we would take care of that through our mid-year budget amendment process. So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, today is the first reading. The second reading is planned for September 12th. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Luckett. Excellent job. Does council have any comments or questions? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I obviously am very focused on looking forward to getting towards the honoring Marcelo part tonight with the resolutions and the proclamation. But I feel I'd be remiss if I wasn't calling something out here, which certainly Councilman Zapata and I worked together for years. And I apologize, Mr. Luckett. Can you go back to the graph that shows the bar graph? And so just really wanting to point out that by this mayor and council choosing to do the rollback rate, the fact that this is the first time in years where there's not a tax increase. And notice, because even when you see the large decrease from FY 2021 down to FY 2022, that was still legally a tax increase. So this will be the first year in a long time that Roswell residents are not going to be notified that their taxes are being increased by the city of Roswell. So I'm very happy that we're going to this rollback rate, and definitely glad that despite rising values, inflation, et cetera, Roswell residents can know that their Roswell city taxes are not going up.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Thank you, sir. Any other comments from council? Well, with no further comments from council, I will invite fellow Roswell residents if they'd like to make any comments on this matter. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you would tell us your name and where you live in Roswell, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Matt Ronzak, address 3001 Vickery Trace. I am, as of this summer, a new Roswell resident. I'm very happy to get out of the city of Atlanta. And I just want to say thank you all for this. I've noticed other cities in this area that have not taken the initiative to begin with to do a tax increase. So I can't thank you enough for that effort. Thanks.
Matt, thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to make any comments on this matter? I see a young man raising his hand. It's Mike Palermo's son. And that makes perfect sense. Like father, like son. All right, being that no one else has any comments, I'm going to bring it back to council. Thank you all. Council, any further additional comments? That being said, Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion on the first reading?
Yes, Mayor. Motion to approve item number 1, approval of an ordinance to adopt a millage rate of 4.463 for FY 2023.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. Thank you so much. All those in favor of this motion, of this first reading being passed, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the Economic Development Department. And this is great news because it's the first time we have items for mayor and council on the agenda from this newly created department. Councilmember Vanstrom, would you read the first economic development item?
It's an honor. Thank you, Mayor. Approval of a scope of services for master planning by the Downtown Development Authority of the City of Roswell. Our Economic Director, Darrell Conley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Back on July 11th, 2022, the Mayor and Council approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Downtown Development Authority for master planning of a half-mile radius at the intersection of Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge Road, and also to reimburse the DDA of $150,000 for those services of the Sizemore Group. Council asked that the scope of work be approved by them prior to entering into the IGA and before it becomes effective. On August 23rd, 2022, I presented it to Council Committee, who requested that additional language be proposed for consideration by you. The scope anticipates mixed-use development and community services. The plan will serve as a framework to attract high-quality development to Roswell, having a similar character to what exists in the city today. The process will include site analysis, interviews with city staff, key stakeholders, case study research, and a planning workshop. The end result will be a master plan and summary with specific recommendations by the Sizemore Group. The proposed changes to the scope of work, the first, which you have on your dais, the design workshop will be changed from 3 days to 2 days. However, the Sizemore team needs additional day to synthesize the information, so the overall cost will not change. The additional language that would be added, I'll read it to you. The master plan should be mindful of the strategic and comprehensive plans for the city. The planning design work will recognize UDC section 13.4.3, letter E, which addresses the location of multifamily. It will also follow UDC section 2.1.1, letter J, mixed-use building that indicates that no residential is allowed on the ground floor. I'm recommending and requesting your approval of this scope of services with these proposed changes. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Conley. Does council have any comments or questions? Yes, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
So I have a question for Mr. Davidson, and again, I feel Councilman Zapata would certainly give me grief if I wasn't asking the tough questions, just as he'd be asking if he were here, because it's really important to always make sure our agreements are holding everybody accountable, both us to the taxpayers as well as anyone that we're doing business with. So with these proposed changes by Mr. Conley, if the master plan were to come back ignoring this requirement, then the city would not be required to basically pay for that. That would be outside the scope and therefore not what we're paying for. Is that right, Mr. Davidson?
Yes, that would be a violation of the agreement and outside the scope, and so they would either change it or not be paid.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Councilman, any other thoughts, questions, or comments for staff? That being said, Darrell, thank you, sir. I will offer this to our Roswell residents. Would anybody like to speak on this matter? Being that there is no one from Roswell that wants to speak on this matter, thank you. Yes, sir. I'm going to bring it back to council. Council, any further comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment to share how excited I am about this. I mean, this is going to be, if voted in, the initial master planning phase for that's been presented by the city and council, and we're excited to get started on master planning our city. It's appropriate too that this is a potential redevelopment that's located centrally at Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge Road. It feeds our city both east, west, north, and south. Well, I'm just thrilled to be working on this process. It's a powerful opportunity, and I think what it's going to do ultimately is bring together the residents, the landowners, the staff, and the council and mayor to work through a process of redevelopment, truly defining and exploring what we want to be in Roswell with our redevelopment. So I can't wait to get this going, and I hope the council will approve this.
Thank you, Councilmember Venstrom, and thank you for your leadership throughout this process, Peter. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions from council? Being that we do not, Councilmember Venstrom, do you have a motion?
A motion to approve the approval of the scope of services for the master planning by the Downtown Development Authority for the City of Roswell.
Thank you, Peter. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Palermo. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations, Darrell. Councilmember Vanstrom, would you read the next item under economic development?
Yes, I would, Mayor. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Roswell Development Authority to provide startup funding in the amount of $34,600 and approval of a budget amendment 1015850-8-29-22.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Would you call? Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, Darrell, left you hanging. Once again, Economic Development Director Darrell Conley. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. On May 23rd, 2022, the mayor and council activated a new Roswell Development Authority. The RDA has budgeted startup expenses for the first year of operations to be $34,600, and they've requested that the city fund these costs. They include administrative support, legal services, training, and supplies. Does not include any project-specific expenses. The proposed intergovernmental agreement with the RDA related to this funding is in your packet. A budget amendment is needed to appropriate funds and is available in the general fund operating contingency. Requesting approval of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Does council have any comments or questions for? Yes, sir. Councilmember Vanstrom.
I'm starting to feel like Mike Palermo. This is fun. Get the microphone. I just like to clarify real quickly the Roswell Development Authority versus the Downtown Development Authority. For those of you who are not familiar with what we are doing with the city development authorities, the Downtown Development Authority has been in existence for some time now. We just approved the last measure for their involvement with the Sizemore Group for the project of master planning. They are the central business district representatives for the city. The Roswell Development Authority will encompass the remainder of the city and aid us in development projects and redevelopment projects. I'd like to note that a majority of the folks who are on that committee served on the East Roswell Economic Action Committee. It is by design that we have members well represented from East Roswell to make sure that we focus on the potential development that's going to be happening over there. And you notice I did say exciting destination development that is going to be happening.
Thank you, Peter. Any other council comment? Any questions or comments from council? That being said, I'd like to invite anybody from our Roswell residents to speak on this matter. Feel free to come up. If you would, welcome, and please introduce yourself and where you live in Roswell.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Peter Corman, and I live in Horseshoe Bend on the east side. I would encourage you to fully fund the Roswell Development Authority and have them go at it and build out the rest of Roswell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Any other Roswell residents like to speak on the matter? Being that no one else does, I'm going to bring it back to council. Council, any additional comments or questions? That being said, Councilmember Vanstrom, do you have a motion?
Yes, thank you. Motion to approve the approval of the intergovernmental agreement with the Roswell Development Authority to provide startup funding for the amount of $34,600 and approval of budget amendment 1015850-8-29-22. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Worthland. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now go to the City Attorney's report. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Do I have a motion for closure after the adjournment of open forum?
Motion for closure after the adjournment and the special acknowledgements.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember Hills. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands to have closure after the open forum. Can you do that for me again because I'm looking down. Thank you. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Being that there are no other items, this special called Mayor and Council meeting of August 29th, 2022 is adjourned. Open forum will begin in just a minute. We just need to give Marley, our city clerk, to be able to switch the recording, so give us a couple of minutes and we'll be right back. Body break? I don't blame you. Thank you, and welcome to the Mayor and Council Open Forum of August 29th, 2022. This is the fifth Monday, which means it's open mic night. But before that, we would like to honor Council Member Marcelo Zapata, who resigned from council on June 28th due to health reasons. We have here tonight his wife, Selena, and his daughter, Isabella, for this honor. Also, Councilmember Marcelo Zapata's cousin, Miguel Ferre, who came in specially from Charlotte, North Carolina, along with his daughter, Leah. And also, Alexandra has come with Miguel to honor Councilmember Zapata. Thank you so much for being here with us. I would like for Councilmember Christine Hall and Councilmember Mike Palermo to join Selena and Isabella at the podium as they read a resolution from Representative Chuck Martin, 49th District, House of Representatives, honoring Councilmember Zapata.
Test.
Excellent. Representative Martin could not be here tonight. Did want to send this resolution that Christine and I will read. A resolution by Representative Chuck Martin, District 49, Georgia House of Representatives, recognizing and commending Marcelo Zapata on his outstanding public service and for other purposes. Whereas Marcelo Zapata has long been recognized by the citizens of this state for the vital role that he has played in leadership and his deep personal commitment to the welfare of the citizens of the city of Roswell, Georgia, and
Whereas he diligently and conscientiously devoted innumerable hours of his time, talents, and energy towards the betterment of his community and state, as evidenced dramatically by his 7 years of superlative service as a council member, and
whereas during his tenure, Marcelo worked closely with staff and served as council liaison to the following departments: Environmental and Public Works, Recreation and Parks, Community Development, Administration, Finance, and Public Safety. And
whereas he further worked to repair the city's aging infrastructure and make funding available for replacing water lines to improve water quality and reliability for the people of Roswell, and
whereas Marcelo's significant organizational and leadership talents, remarkable patience and diplomacy, keen sense of vision, and sensitivity to the needs of the citizens of this state have earned him the respect and admiration of his colleagues and associates, and
whereas he has long been cherished by his peers and colleagues as an honest and dedicated public servant who strives for excellence in all of his endeavors and whose primary concern is the well-being of his fellow citizens, and
whereas Marcelo has served with honor and distinction, and his vision and unyielding commitment to excellence have set the standard for public service, and whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable and distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Marcelo Zapata is recognized and commended for his efficient, effective, unselfish, and dedicated public service to the city of Roswell and the state of Georgia, and extended the most sincere best wishes. So resolved, this 24th day of August, 2022.
Mike and Christine, don't go anywhere. Isabella and Selena, don't go anywhere. So I would like we have a very special proclamation from the city of Roswell honoring Councilmember Zapata. So I'd like for the council to all join me down here with Selena and Isabella. Will you join us again? Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. Honoring Councilmember Marcelo Zapata. Whereas in 2000, Marcelo Zapata and his wife Selena moved to Roswell from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and lived in Horseshoe Bend, where they raised their daughter, Isabella. Marcelo learned at an early age by example what it meant to have a public servant heart. Carola, Marcelo's mother, was a teacher, and Jorge, his father, was a lawyer and congressman in Argentina. Marcelo went on to graduate from Universidad Champot in Mendoza with an international trade degree and earned a master's in business administration from Bocconi University in Milan, Italy. In 2015, Marcelo was elected by the citizens of Roswell to serve as a city council member and re-elected in 2019 and served honorably until his retiring of office in 2022. And whereas throughout his tenure, Marcelo was appointed as a liaison to various city departments, the city of Roswell would like to recognize the following accomplishments. environmental, and public works. Marcelo understood how precious water was as a resource. He worked to make funding available for replacing aging water lines to improve water quality and reliability of service for the citizens of Roswell. And whereas the fire department, Marcelo raised awareness to previous and current council members for the need to start staffing full-time firefighters. He was instrumental in supporting the purchase of ballistic gear for the Roswell Fire Department. The Roswell Fire Department was able to purchase vests, helmets, and tactical-grade medical care tools for every frontline apparatus in the city. Also, he was involved in the purchase of a swiftwater rescue boat. This rescue boat is designed for shallow water rescue operations and has dramatically enhanced the safety and efficiency of our water rescue operations. Marcelo established a maker space for the community known as Roswell Fire Labs, located in the old fire station on Holcomb Bridge Road. Recreation and parks. Marcelo was consistent in his passion and priorities for the sport of soccer and responsibly investing in existing recreation and parks facilities. He was a great steward of the residents' dollars and always supporting ways for a leaner and more efficient government. He was instrumental in the purchase of 7 Branches property in East Roswell, which is now Recreation and Parks land. Administration. Marcelo was successful in establishing term limits for council members and promoted guidelines and requirements for outside organizations that partner with the city of Roswell. The police department. Marcelo was instrumental in developing Roswell's first Hispanic Citizen Police Academy and participated in the class offered by the Roswell Police Department to support our bilingual community. Whereas the city of Roswell citizens, mayor and council members, and staff would like to say thank you to Councilmember Marcelo Zapata for his public service, contributions, dedication, and innovative ideas. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of Roswell, and Roswell City Council members, do hereby proclaim Monday, August 29th, 2022, as a day for the city of Roswell to acknowledge Councilmember Marcelo Zapata's contribution and express our heartfelt appreciation for his public service. So we got a couple more pieces of business. Thanks to, take this out. Thanks to Robin, who did an amazing job tonight. There was a lot going on. So Mike and Christine, would you present this to Isabella and to Selena? This is, so I have been told by our marshals and by the city attorney that you can get into City Hall, which you know is on lockdown all the time. All you gotta do is show this key. This is an amazing plaque. Mike, show it off. It's pretty cool. This is really, really cool. Yeah. It is kind of cool. Lena, I know you want to say some words, and let's invite, can we invite the rest of the family up? Please come up. So, Leah, Alexandra, Miguel, I'm sorry, I've just done such a bad job with the pronunciation. I apologize. Thank you. Selena.
Thank you very much. My sincere thanks to Mayor Wilson and all council members and the residents of Roswell for their heartfelt words and for recognizing Marcelo's contribution to making Roswell a better place. Roswell is truly his adopted hometown. Our daughter Isabella and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. In all the various activities that Marcelo was involved in over the years, the wine business, starting a semi-pro soccer team, it was always evident to us that his work as a council member in Roswell not only meant the most to him, but it also was what he was most passionate about. Just has this charisma that is fueled by his desire for bringing people together. And I think that is apparent to anyone who meets him. And I have no doubt we all have a few stories. He was committed to his work for Roswell, and I remember the day earlier this year when I discovered a printout of the oath that he took when he was sworn into office in January 2016, kept in the side pocket of his car. He always put Roswell first, and we are enormously proud of him. Isabella and I wish all the best for the city, Mayor Wilson and council members, and look forward to seeing the fruits of some of the seeds that Marcelo planted. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And I really do appreciate everybody that came tonight, you know, both in the Rotunda and here, because absolutely the city of Roswell means so much to Marcelo, and just serving with him for all those years. So keeping in mind that I've actually served with Marcelo for longer than the rest of this mayor and council have served, period. And so Marcelo and I have so many stories together where just seeing how much he cares about the residents. Really, when he decided to run, it was semi, you know, last minute, and he just really decided that he felt, you know, residents weren't being listened to, and so he might as well go and try to be one of those people, because he really wanted to listen to the residents and do what's you know, really best for residents. And it's just absolutely amazing, because in all these years I've met so many different elected officials in so many different roles, and it's so easy for anyone to always get a different perspective once they're in an elected office. I'm telling you right now, there is nobody that is better than Marcelo at truly keeping the resident perspective at all times. It was absolutely just incredible and so valuable as a true public servant and true representative. And the other thing I really want to mention is just the vision. I loved hearing vision tonight, because it really was so amazing with Marcelo, whether it's up here or in closure, or just brainstorming through the different weeks, just having so many things of vision. You know, when he was really the loudest advocate of getting to preserve more property, whether it's through Mimosa Hall or Seven Branches. I remember him just even calling out vision. You know, where's the vision? You know, where's the thinking long term down the road? And same thing, of course, when there was the big discussion and frankly, city plan to turn the old fire station just into more commercial space, and instead having vision, bringing people together and seeing that really a maker space is something that the city's lacking, not just more commercial space to compete with vacant commercial space. So I obviously could speak for hours, but what I just really want to bring up is just I truly believe that we as a city are so fortunate that Marcelo and his family chose to spend over 6 years, you know, in elected office, really fighting for the people of Roswell. And I feel there's so many different examples of why that's the case. And from a personal standpoint, there's no question that certainly I'm a better council member, and I was able to be a more effective representative thanks to having Marcelo as a great just friend and confidant, et cetera, within the elected office. So again, before I accidentally speak for another 2 hours, and I'd love to hear what anybody else wants to say, but again, thank you all for being here. And again, thank you so much to the Zapata family and everything Marcelo did.
like to say something?
I'll be a little bit more brief. Marcelo really, truly was, he's the councilman that we all aspire to be. He did not just, he walked the walk. He wasn't all talk. He talked about accountability, about transparency, and that those were the guidelines that he lived by. As Selena had said, that his oath was, he kept it in his car. And that is the type of individual that he was. And I am so much a better council person. And, you know, I think to what would Marcelo do in this situation? And I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to spend 2 years with him.
Thank you. God bless. Everybody keep Marcelo, Selena, Isabella, and family in your prayers, please. Thank you. Oh, and we have flowers. Yes, pictures. Sorry, forget about the pictures. I think we could keep those pictures up, right, throughout this. I think it would be appropriate. Because the next part, it's open mic, it's public comment. And I've got a request. My request, and I think you'll find this favorable. What I'd like to ask is, I believe that there are people who want to speak about Marcelo tonight. And I'd like for those people to be able to speak first. And if you're here to speak about Marcelo, but you'd like to speak about something else, then the opportunity, you won't get just one comment tonight. You can have a second comment. But my request is, first comments all be about Marcelo. If it's about something else, would you please wait until everybody's had a chance to speak about Marcelo? That's my request. And if you're worried, you say, well, if I come speak about Marcelo, will I get a chance to speak later? The answer is yes. Just remind you, fill out a comment card, strict 5-minute time limit. And so would anybody like to come up and speak about Marcelo? Yes, ma'am, in the black hat. Please let everybody know who you are.
Is there a microphone here?
Yes, ma'am, it's right in front of you. It should work perfectly if you just...
Or no?
I know.
I'm Janet Hidalgo Russell. And I remember clearly the night that Marcelo was elected, and we were all at what was pastis. And I was so happy to toast him as the first Hispanic elected official in Roswell, because for a long time when I moved here, I was the only Hispanic in town. And it was so nice to meet someone else who was going to be at the top. Marcelo was a unique individual, but I've got to say tonight, giving him the key to the city, he would be so thrilled because the only other key to the city we've ever given was to Tata Martino. He was the coach of the Atlanta United soccer team. And we all know that Marcelo was nuts about soccer. And he stood here with Tata and the Argentine Consul General, and we had the pictures taken because I got to be the translator. And it was so much fun. So he knows he's in good company with Tata. You can tell him that, he and Tata together. I think he would also be very pleased because he pushed for an economic developer 7 years ago, and we finally got you here. It took a while. You know, we move in glacial minutes in Roswell. A few things people don't know about him that he did was he pushed for a upper tier soccer academy here in Roswell at one point to Recreation and Parks. The Recreation and Parks turned it down, but I was present at that Parks meeting, and he wanted to bring in, it was a private soccer academy from South America, again, to raise the bar over the Santos. I met with him once downtown at Caribou Coffee on 10th and Piedmont, because he met with a woman who had a foundation that bought aging apartment complexes around Metro Atlanta, and they rehab them, and they create community, and they keep the kids in schools, and they offer after-school tutoring, and they give them a wholesome place to live, and we have a lot of those. And Marcelo was concerned about those apartments, and we met and talked with her for about 2 hours about the possibility of her foundation moving into Roswell. He didn't live in a bubble. He was aware of a lot of things. He also pushed for the safety pedestrian access on the bridge over Georgia 400 on Holcomb Bridge Road. He said aesthetics weren't as important as safety. He pushed and he pushed. He also, how do I put this? He and I had long discussions. People didn't know these things. That's why I'm talking about them. He did a lot of things behind the scenes quietly. It was not the photo op person that wanted his picture taken every time he was doing something. We met for a long time, many times, to talk about bringing a trade school to Roswell. We have a nationwide shortage of welders and auto mechanics now, and that was pre-pandemic. We talked about taking an old shopping center here and rehabbing it and making it into student apartments so that the students could go to trade school here. He was really interested in doing that because he knew not everyone needs to go to college to have a great job, and we're learning that now that we're in the throes of the pandemic. We worked on that. What else? Oh, a lot of times he sat over there. He always sat over there. And people would say, he always votes no. He votes against what everybody else is appearing. And I would say, actually, he may be voting no, but what he is voting yes for all the residents of Roswell. Because he voted with his conscience. The man had integrity, values, and loyalty. And I'm so glad that he came here and worked for us. I miss him terribly. So I say, salud, amor, dinero, mujeres y hombres y el tiempo para gozarlos. Viva Marcelo.
Ms. Russell tried to get me to do that same toast.
Oh, yeah, right.
And yeah, well,
Just ask him well.
point well taken. Who else would like to come talk about Marcelo? Yes, ma'am. Please share with us who you are and where you live, and thank you for being with us. Welcome.
Yes, my name's Claire Snedeker, and I'm excited to be here tonight. It's very bittersweet for all of us. I just want to follow up on what Janet said about often I think of there were tears of joy on our faces the night of Marcelo's first election, and we were there at Pastis, and I just remember the tears of joy. It was like amazing, just so amazing. And I think too of how he helped bring front and center the access online, so everyone in the city would know what positions were available on the boards and commissions. That was a passion of his. Like, how can we welcome everyone to participate in the city government and feel like we want them included? So he did that marvelously. He got that to be something that we just now think has always been there, but it hasn't been. So I thank him for that. I also think of his integrity and his ability to ask the really tough questions when things were being debated and discussed. And mostly I think of his being driven to connect with people and take interest in them. The focus was always on the others and has been, and not on himself. So I just want to say how grateful I am to have known him, and I am praying for him, and we are just so glad to be here tonight to celebrate him. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, ma'am. Welcome. Please share with everybody who you are and where you live. Thank
I'm
you.
Marissa Pereira. I live in the Vickery Creek subdivision. I just want to say that we are praying for Marcelo, all of our subdivision, and the people on our entire street. Because I worked with Marcelo probably a couple, 2 years ago, but I think you've heard the word integrity quite a bit. I'm here to attest to that. We were specifically working over several months on this whole Grimes Bridge initiative, and Marcelo realized that we, the people of the Grimes Bridge Road, seemed to be at a terrible disadvantage because of certain decisions that were made without our knowledge. And he worked tirelessly, and when it came time to take a vote, we met with him and a couple of other members of council, but at the time of the vote, he was the only person that said no, when all three of them had promised us that they would say no. So we applaud him. He didn't just go along to get along, and I think we need more people like that. So we'll pray for him, and we wish him.
Thank you, Marissa. Who's next? Welcome, sir. Please share with us who you are and where you live, and welcome.
Yeah, my name is Jason Sabatino, and I'm over in Horseshoe Bend. And I just want to touch on a few points that were already made this evening. Obviously, I know everybody up here, a lot of people in the audience tonight, but the thing that I really want to emphasize is that Marcelo's integrity, his willingness to stand on the principles and, in his beliefs. A lot of people, he's known for a lot of people saying no, right? He's always the no. But I think the benefit that a lot of people don't realize is that because he said no, he forced you on this council here and those that came before you to discuss and talk about the issue. And I think one of the marks that may go unseen is how much better our city is and how different sometimes the outcomes were simply because he brought attention to a detail or an issue that others were either unwilling or afraid to talk about. He brought a voice to people that were underrepresented in the city. He got a lot of people involved in the city in different ways that they may not have otherwise been involved. Sometimes, sometimes those people were in the spotlight and sometimes they weren't. But Marcelo was, in my opinion, one of the truest one of the truest people, that's been involved with the city. He never, ever, ever had an agenda or any kind of, anything guiding him other than his heart and what he felt was best for the people. And I think that, the city, the residents in the city, our neighboring cities, you got to remember, neighboring cities feed off of Roswell too, are all better because of it. And you know, I miss him greatly. He's a good friend of mine, and just praying for his swift recovery and return. And my family and I just send our love to the Zapatas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am. Please share with us your name and where you live here in Roswell, and we're glad to see you. Welcome.
Aaron Parrish. I live in Willowwood Drive. I just want to say to you, thank you for, I know behind the man, there's always someone that's pushing and encouraging, and I thank you for what you did for Marcelo, because I know there were times when it would have been easier to step down and stay home for the evening and to not put up with some of the public ridicule that he did, because he stood for all of us as taxpayers. He was an ardent and fierce supporter of each and every person in this room that paid taxes to the city of Roswell, to make sure that the city watched every dollar that was spent here. And that was hard. And he took a lot of incoming shots for that. And I thank him for standing up for me up here on the dais multiple times. And in fact, one of the last meetings that he was in was a committee meeting where he was advocating for the least of these at the Roswell Housing Authority. One of his most passionate topics was water, clean, safe water, and he was advocating that the city help the Roswell Housing Authority bring in new water lines that connected. So anyway, thank you for your support of Marcelo, and thank you guys for honoring him tonight.
Thank you, Karen. Who else would like to come talk about Marcelo?
Horseshoe Bend.
Thank you, Peter. Next person up on Marcelo. I know there's a lot of people here who care deeply about him. I can see you. Anybody else want to say anything else? I'm going to, yeah. Welcome, sir. Thanks for coming. Please share with us who you are and where you live.
My name is Herb Sherrick, and I live in the city of Roswell. I'm a business colleague of Marcelo's, and I just wanted to say you guys are really lucky to have him for the time that he was a council member here. And also, I just wanted to say also the passion that he had for the council and working with all the citizens and everything. He had that same passion for his family, too. His family was really important to him. His family is very important to him, and I've gotten to know them over the years, and so, thank you.
Any more comments from the public on Marcelo? I know council would like to see a few more words, and I'll just say, I'll keep it short and sweet. So, Isabella and Leah, this is for you. I think what Marcelo, and you probably picked up elements of this just hearing this tonight, and you already know this, but what Marcelo Zapata represents to me and you probably heard it, is one person can change events. One person can begin to change how things are going in one direction and change them in another direction. And so Marcelo Zapata really was the beginning of the change agent, the resident change agent in the city of Roswell, and was often alone in that path, and had the courage and audacity to stay on that path. So a lot to learn, a lot to emulate, a lot to aspire to be like Marcelo Zapata. And thank him for what he did for our city, because Roswell is a better city because of Marcelo Zapata. Councilmember Martland.
Thank you, Mayor. This is going to be a quick story, but it means a lot to me. And I've shared this with the family and the council earlier today, but I think it's important because this is a story about my son. And it gives you a little deep understanding on what kind of man Marcelo was. And as the mayor just described, he says Marcelo has done so many great things and has put so many good pieces in place for everyone to follow and emulate. I would not be here today if it were not for Marcelo. And the reason behind that is when we moved to Roswell in October of 2015, my son was a kindergartner at Mountain Park Elementary, and I get this email from the PTA that says, hey, everybody, Youth Day Parade. Everybody come out and support. Well, as my wife knows, I love a parade. So I read the email with great excitement to my son, and I said, guess what, buddy? He's in kindergarten. We're going to go to the Youth Day Parade this weekend, and we're going to be part of the crew. He's so excited. He starts looking forward to it. This is on a Monday or a Tuesday. So we go through the work week. Every night before we go to bed, he's asking about the Youth Day Parade. What's going to happen? Are there going to be bands? Are there going to be fireworks? Are there going to be people jumping around? Buddy, I have no idea. But I know we're going to have a great time. So he's very much looking forward to it. The day comes. He springs out of bed, comes and gets me, and we start getting ready, just talking about Youth Day Parade. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to the Youth Day Parade. So we start down the path. I did not realize at the time what a big deal Youth Day Parade is. Congratulations to Roswell, Director Leatherman. But Youth Day Parade is quite the scene. And we get down there. It's a little overwhelming for me because I was not expecting such a scene. But we end up finding the park, Mountain Park float. Once we get down there, as everybody understands what Youth Day is, everything is in high chaos because it's about 10 minutes before the whole show starts, and people are still building floats. So we approach a group of people and say, hey, we're here. And I have my little man in tow, and he's got his Mountain Park shirt on. They don't even recognize us. And then the next person that comes running by, I say, hey, we're here, what can we do? And they just, they basically say, get something and start tacking onto this float. We're about to pull away. So we start working on it. And then it gets time to load the float. And this is where it turns. We load the float, and I realize as people are entering the float and climbing aboard, it's all fifth graders. I look around and there is no kindergartner. There are no young people. He's the only one there. And so I asked someone that is standing next to me, I said, well, where do we go? And they basically said, you know what you guys can do? You can sit on the side and cheer us on. That would be a great thing for you to do this weekend. And that's when it hit me. I didn't understand that the Youth Day float was for fifth graders and not the entire school. The entire school was part of the process, but I had built this up like we were going to ride the float. And so I looked down at him and I say, buddy, your dad's messed up. I'm sorry. And he doesn't understand. And so I start explaining it to him. And with that, I see a tear start coming down his eye. And as a father, that will really do something to you. So I inform him. I said, buddy, we got to go find your mom, and we're going to do exactly what they said. We're going to cheer the float on just as hard as we can and with as much as excitement as we can. And he's not happy. He's pretty hurt. He's torn up about it. But we start making our way to where my wife and others are located. Well, as we're walking down the boulevard, about 6 or 7 floats down, the parade is getting ready to start, and I see this other float that is still tacking things onto the side and still hanging streamers and still pushing hay bales around. And I poke on someone's shoulder, and I start talking to this individual and explaining what had happened, and then I just kind of pick up my son's hand, and I said, here he is. He's still got his tear in his eye. And I said, I don't know whose float this is, but it looks like there's some availability. Would you mind if we jump on this float? And with that, he turns around and puts his arm on my shoulder, and he says, no problem, my friend. Welcome aboard. And it was Marcelo Zapata's first float. Again, without Marcelo, I would not be here today.
Thanks, Councilmember Morthland. Councilmember Hills, did you have any?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I can't top that, Will. But I will say that Marcelo Zapata took a chance on me. He picked up my sign last fall and barely interviewed me and vetted me and took a big chance on me and supported me wholeheartedly. He waved my signs, he wore my stickers, and everybody sitting up here knows that Marcelo Zapata is my favorite council member. They all know, and I love you all for your own little interesting pieces, but Marcelo is my favorite. And we don't necessarily share some national ideas, but we share everything else, and I'm pulling for him. He's a man of his word, he's a man of God, and he's a family man. So it's my honor to have known him, to continue to know him, to pray for him, to love him, and to be an extension of your family here. So I'm a big fan.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. I told Selena and family this earlier, but it's true. Every week, and not a week goes by that Lee doesn't say to me, I wish Marcelo was here. I mean, every single week she says it at least once. And she also says Marcelo is her favorite council person. But, Councilmember Peter Vanstrom.
I think it's time to wrap up a wonderful celebration. The residents who were here, the business people who were here tonight, the staff that's here tonight, what an amazing tribute. It just says an awful lot for a very humble man. It really does. Impressive. And I'll tell you one thing it also reflects is what a wonderful city we have here in Roswell. The fact that we can all gather and that we can all honor someone who did so much for this city. And I want to remind everybody that he's still fighting. That he is still fighting, and we need to pray for him. We need to visit him. If you haven't been to Argentina, it's beautiful. And we need to remember that this city is a better place because of Marcelo Zapata. And I'm proud to serve on council with all of his great things that he's accomplished. I'm humbled.
Thank you, Peter. All right, so out of great concern and kindness towards the Zapata family, because they have been here a long time, and my assumption is you probably don't want to sit through the rest of public comment. So now I'd like to say, if y'all will join me in saying thank you and saying with a round of applause, and y'all go on. Thank you, Selena, for being here. I don't have to tell you what a incredible amount of courage Selena and Isabella have shown through these months. They're amazing. They're amazing people. Okay, so I know we have got some folks who want to, it's open mic night. I just want to let you know that answers to questions asked during open forum will be available by 5 p.m. on Friday, September the 2nd at roswellgov.com/open forum. Just remember, bring comment card, say who you are, where you live in Roswell, and 5 minutes. And we look forward to the rest of the evening with you. So who would like to come speak first at the open forum? Yes, ma'am, in the black hat.
Nothing's changed since 10 minutes ago. Janet Russell. First of all, I would just like to say what I heard tonight from all the people that talked about Marcelo. What I heard was what we value in this city as residents, as humans. Sometimes it gets lost in social media and in politics. And in the end, we're all connected. In Africa, there's a word called Ubuntu, which means without you, I don't exist, and without me, you don't exist. And I suggest that the city officials and staff and everybody else in this town remember the values that were expressed tonight that were appreciated about Mr. Zapata. Because not all heroes wear capes. And he was a hero for this town, for everybody, from the lowest to the richest. So I might remind all of our elected officials at all levels of government that it's not about you. Don't let your ego get in the way. That said, we don't need a $20 million parking garage.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Who's next? Yes, ma'am. Welcome. Glad you're here. Please share with us your name and where you live.
My name is Courtney Rozier, and I live at 540 Hembry Road. I'm here this evening on behalf of Yolanda Freeman to invite everyone to the Community, Unity, and Diversity meetings led by Yolanda. Meetings are held the third Monday of each month from 5 to 8 p.m. at Main Event off of Mansell Road. Everyone interested in building community, unity, and diversity, which I think we've heard here tonight, we all are interested in and inspired by Councilmember Zapata. I have been inspired by Yolanda, who ran for City Council, and have involved myself in the meetings. We are going to be changing up the format a little bit, and we're going to be having some special forums over the next few months. Starting in September the 19th meeting, we're going to be having a housing panel discussing some of the recent developments at the Groveway. We're also going to have different representatives from the community to join us in those discussions. And then we'll still have the second part of the meeting. We'll have candidates from the different elections, local and state, to come and speak also. On October the 17th, we'll then also be featuring a meet and greet with the different candidates. We'll be dedicating that meeting towards that. We're extending invitations to different local and state candidates who are running for election for November the 8th. And what we're also hoping to do is we're reaching out to the different high schools, the PTSAs, and inviting students to lead that forum. And then on November the 14th, we're going to be continuing our discussions on housing in Roswell and the surrounding areas. We plan to discuss the recent amendments to the UDC and the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And then we'll also discuss the current housing market and housing choices and invite attendees to join and participate. And then for our last meeting of the year, we're going to have an end-of-year celebration celebrating the diversity of Roswell and the surrounding area. Let's see, okay, I still have a couple of minutes. I'm also a member of the McHenry Brown Historical Marker Committee. We meet each month on the first Saturday at Riverside Park. We'll be meeting this coming Saturday on the 3rd, and we hope that you and all of the community who is interested again in diversity and honest conversations about race in the community, both historically and as we move forward, present and into the future. And since I still have a couple more seconds left, I want to thank Councilmember Hills for mentioning the death of the teacher at Roswell High School. My sister, my daughter, love her like a sister, right? But my daughter had him for a second period and was devastated. In a very short time of the school year, he had made a real bond with her, and which was very special to our family because school is not her favorite place. So having a place where she was connecting with a teacher was really special. So thank you for sharing that tonight and remembering him. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. And just to kind of buttress Courtney's reminders, Yolanda Freeman, a wonderful resident who ran for council this past year, has a unity event every 4 weeks. It is at Main in Roswell. Main, it's right next to Sam's Club. What's the name of it, Courtney? I forget. Main Event, sorry, I got a little stuck there. Main Event, it's every 4 weeks. The next date is September the 17th. Is that correct? It's on Monday nights, if I remember right. Monday night, September 19th. All are welcome. Everyone is welcome. And there will be lots of candidates there. So it'll be another great place to meet candidates and talk about issues. And Yolanda is very erstwhile and earnest in this event and trying to bring people together. So it's definitely worth your time. Thank you. And McHenry Brown, if you haven't been there, it's at the bridge there at the river, at the Riverside Road. It's really, it's a very neat marker. Thank you, Courtney. All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Lucia Frazier. I live on 485 Hardscrabble Road. And I do have a handout. Should I pass that out now or?
Can it be put on the screen, on the overhead?
Have one for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so first I just want to thank you all for our service.
Bear with, just stop her time. Can we help get her, yes, ma'am, magnified? Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, so thank you very much for your service to our city. I'm just here to get the ball rolling on something a little different in the spirit of increased individual sustainability, increased bodily health, and decreased environmental impact. I would like to ask that you initiate and support a project to have more garden, poultry, and livestock-friendly city code. We have a city culture that's devoted to beautiful parks and preservation of historical architecture. We also used to have a very large farming community here. And we still have a good amount of residential properties that have ample space to have bountiful vegetable gardens and chickens or other animals. There's a strong desire from many people in our city to work towards self-sustaining homesteads. And we get such visitors to our farm all the time. And I recently advertised a free class on keeping chickens, and I received a lot of interest and appreciation for that. So I've come across many people who are just slightly below the minimum acreage to have poultry, or they have too much shade in their backyard, and so they can't grow vegetables. So our city code needs to be adjusted to allow for more residents to be self-sustaining. So on this sheet, I just highlighted the most positively impactful items that are identified in our code that I think would help everybody. So I'll just go through them briefly, and I can pass a handout to all of you to keep for later. So for poultry raising, we should remove that minimum acreage and just increase the number of poultry per acre. Currently, it's like 10,000 times more restrictive on the space that chickens actually need. So there's a lot of space for improvement here. Poultry enclosures, we should just use the accessory structure guidelines for those. Livestock enclosures, same with those. Let's just use the accessory guidelines. And also I wanted to point out, I think this might be an error when it was written, but there's no place on a 2-acre lot that is 150 feet away from the property line. It's geometrically impossible. So I think we have to look at that. And as far as neatness and cleanliness, this is already covered in our nuisance ordinances. And then let's remove the restrictions on gardens to be only in the backyard. Growing food should be in the most optimal place on a person's property. We are a tree-friendly city, which is wonderful, but vegetables do need light. And then let's remove the prohibition on roosters. We do have noise ordinance that will cover that. And there are several ways to reduce the volume, and I can help teach that. And the volume is no different than the chickens at that point. Roosters play a huge role in protecting the flock from predators, and they provide the ability to raise chicks, which is equally important for self-sustaining. And there's no reason to just call out one animal. I mean, I could get a peacock. It's not called out, and it's much louder, or a donkey. So there's no reason to call out a specific animal as long as the resident can control any issue that there might be with that. So we have ordinances that we can help with that. So our community has a few farms and homesteads already, and we all enjoy teaching people in our community how to get on the path of homesteading. In general, most communities are overly dependent on our long-distance supply chain. So growing our own food gives us resiliency, and it allows for a huge reduction in our environmental footprint. I believe our community would do a great job in taking on more gardening and animal farming, and I'm happy to continue teaching and helping people along this path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser. Thank you. You want to give those to Lee, and we'll pass them down. Just give those, yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks very much. Who's next? Yes, ma'am. Welcome, Marissa.
Marissa Pereira from Vickery Creek Subdivision. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to address a couple of topics today. Number one, process, and number two, fiscal responsibility and financial review. In understanding different projects that we've discussed over the last several months, I've noticed a recurring pattern of projects and designs having to be redone, either because they are ill-conceived, overpriced, or citizen-resistant, or all of the above. I believe this stalemate can easily be resolved by addressing the process or lack thereof, which we either follow or don't follow. In almost all of the projects we have discussed to date, it appears that the projects were designed and approved by City Hall before citizens had input. This has consistently proven to be a recipe for disaster. I believe following a process where we begin with getting the citizens' input and then executing with the goal of designing to meet the needs of the citizens while keeping budget front and center would resolve this stalemate. Also, I think it would behoove the various commissions to work as a team to understand the global picture on various issues and projects. The end result would be that much more thorough. On the topic of fiscal responsibility and financial review, I'd like to see greater emphasis placed on questioning how the taxpayer money is spent. For example, ROW acquisitions exponentially increase the cost of any projects, and tearing down our tree canopy destroys our historic city. Our goal should be to figure out how to design without these heavy ROW acquisitions as far as possible. If ROW is needed, it would make sense to find out if this is going to be a battle or not before finalizing the design. Designing without this information, without this information in hand is a guaranteed stalled project and therefore becomes a bottomless pit of our tax dollars. Regarding financial review, as an example, I'd like to point out, I have looked at the IGA of the express lanes on 400 between GDOT and Roswell. I see provisions to protect GDOT in the case of delay or default by Roswell, but not vice versa. This project has already been pushed back a few times by GDOT, but per the agreement, Roswell was supposed to start making payments to the tune of multiple millions of dollars of our taxpayer dollars in 2021. So we have no firm date on a project that apparently we've already made multiple millions of dollars in payments. So the question is how much, and that's not a rhetorical question. Even if I'm having work done on my home or my car, this would be a bizarre contract. Now, I'm not any attorney, but these are common sense questions. How come this is allowed? In this case, shouldn't we, Roswell, be accumulating some interest of on our own money rather than GDOT having that privilege while this project is on hold? Another example of seeming extremes in spending was the $600,000 that was appropriated for the small bits of sidewalk on Woodstock Road. That was only for design. Yes, it has already been approved without a bid process and without any urgency that anyone has acknowledged. Roswell's response to the question on the high price tag was, we estimated $1 million, so $600,000 is actually a savings of $400,000. My next question would be, what did you base this estimate on of $1 million? Was there any due diligence done when formulating the estimate to be of $400,000 on a small project is nothing to brag about? Who is asking to see these estimates? How are they arrived at?
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you.
The amount of money we spend
Your
could
time is
easily
up.
be
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
for
you.
the Roswell citizens.
Time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Who's next? Yes, ma'am. Claire, yes, ma'am. Please share with us who you are and where you live. Welcome.
Claire Barnes, live in Roswell, 19 Revival Street. My issue tonight is I want to readjust the fact, I've got the fact sheet from the historic Roswell Gateway project. And this was
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right, okay. I've got the fact sheet from the historic Roswell Gateway Project enhancements, and this was addressed with the Roswell Transportation Commission, y'all at your last council combined meeting. And it's about, I'm gonna read from this, and residents is roswellgov.com/tsplost. And it's like, Roswell's portion of the historic gateway enhancements and reconstruction of Atlanta Street from Chattahoochee River north to historic Roswell, which include underground utilities, and this is the issue I've got the issue with. We as residents voted on the underground utilities, and somehow, it got deleted. And so I don't understand why, as residents, we vote for something, and again, either mayor and council, past mayor and council, or Roswell Department of Transportation has left y'all in an indefensible position again. But you're asking us to come and vote on these bonds, but our votes are changed or ignored or disrespected, on something as big as this underground utilities of the Gateway Project. I mean, that's an integral part of this project. For you just to, somebody, well, I don't know who, we haven't found out who or why, deleted it. And obviously it caught you by surprise, Mayor, because at this last council / RTAC meeting, you were surprised. And so it makes me question, RDOT's leaving y'all again, hanging in the wind, in an indefensible position. So, but you're asking us to vote for these bonds coming up, but why should we, is it prudent to vote for these bonds that our votes are disrespected and changed? So it makes me real question this, but this is an integral part of this project that needs to be in this project. We voted on it, and I don't know who took the authority upon themselves to change it, whether it was Roswell Department of Transportation, and y'all didn't know. Obviously you didn't know, it caught you by surprise when it was brought up. So, it's an issue that needs to be addressed. Because I live on that stretch of road, and we lose our power a lot because of power line damage. It has to be buried. But I don't understand the rationale of y'all that something so integral part that it can't go back and redo it later. It's not something you can do later, of why it was taken out and why y'all were surprised. But it makes me question RDOT again in having the trust for that department. And for the past mayor and council, they have shown us as our city residents, we can't trust them. And trust is something that's got to be earned. And RDOT is not earning it right now. And y'all need to look at them better and just quit saying, well, staff's doing it, supporting staff. They're leaving y'all hanging in the wind. And it's not right. But Roswell residents deserve better. We're not getting it. But we need to know that our votes are respected, especially when you want to vote on these bonds, that we will vote. Because right now, it's not very prudent to do that, knowing they can be changed and are changed. They have been. This is living proof. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, ma'am, in the back with the purple shirt. Welcome. I don't recognize you, so welcome, and this may be your first time. So share with us who you are and where you live.
Yes, this is my first time here. I'm Lisa Griffith, and I live on Indian Springs Drive.
Hey, Lisa.
And so my question and comment is about the city of Roswell implementing any ordinances to restrict what's called party houses. The neighborhood I live in is very quiet, and last fall, a house was occupied by a family and sold pretty quickly for $1.6 million. And this house has turned into, it is not owner occupied, and it appears to be rented for the purposes of parties. So the parties have been getting more frequent and very loud. There's parking all over Riverside Road. There's parking up Indian Springs. I'm not sure about Riviera, which is next to us. We're down by the river. There's parking everywhere, people loitering, and it goes on. I think some of my neighbors called the police because the music was so loud, and the decibel rating was just under the limit. So the police indicated there was nothing that could be done. But if you really start researching this in the news, this is becoming a common thing in Buckhead, Decatur, Cobb County, and everybody is working to put ordinances in to do some kind of restriction. Not a restriction on Airbnb rentals in general, but I mean, this is not an owner-occupied home. It was a residential property converted into basically a house to rent for big parties. And so I lived in my house for 30 years, and it is totally, it can't, I mean, it's not every weekend, but they're becoming more frequent. So the question is, you know, if it can happen in my neighborhood, it can happen in your neighborhood, and what will the city of Roswell do proactively to begin to limit this in some way? Because it's pretty interesting to see at 10 o'clock at night what's going on. People everywhere. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. We'll follow up on that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right, good evening, Council. Matt Ronzak again, 3001 Vickery Trace. And I want to talk to you tonight, give you an example of things that have a stark contrast between each other. If you were to put a Cadillac Escalade next to a Toyota Leaf, right, you could tell there's an obvious difference. Good or bad, you decide. I want to share something with you locally that has a very stark contrast between each other, and that is specifically Fulton County. So for 2022, Fulton County's elections department has the potential to spend $47 million this year. Let that sink in for a second. Our neighbor, Cobb County, who has approximately 75% of the registered voters as Fulton, is projected to spend $5.5 million. So if we make that an apples to apples comparison, right, you do the math, that means Fulton's 47, 48 is really 35. So they're spending anywhere between 6 and 7 times the amount of money as Cobb County. In many other counties, it's worse. If we were to take the Fulton County spending model based on the number of registered voters, which Fulton represents about 10% of the registered voters in this state, we would spend $500 million every year in the state of Georgia. That's a B. So, my tiny font. In 2021, Fulton County, this is their own audit that they did, financial review of their elections department from 2020. Finding number 1, lack of departmental standard operating procedures. That's shocking. Finding number 2, inconsistent procurement procedures. Finding number 3, untimely payment of invoices. Finding number 4, lack of supporting documentation. Finding number 5, improper payment of services. Finding number 6, inadequate safeguard of assets. Finding number 7 and 8 were failure to comply with grant requirements. Finding number 9, inadequate departmental accountability and oversight of the financial transactions. I'll give you a couple specific examples of these. From finding number 2, inconsistent procurement procedures, I'm quoting you from the audit. Upon reviewing purchasing documentation from the department, it was noted that purchase orders were generated after the receipt of invoices from the vendor for approximately $2.4 million of the $4.4 million or the sample selected. One more example. Finding number 4, lack of supporting documentation. Again, I'll quote from their report. We sampled invoice files for transaction that occurred during the scope of our audit and noted the department did not maintain records for professional services, including overtime, totaling $1,965,260. This is the result of inadequate management and oversight of the contract as vendor invoices should be verified against the department's records. Management informed us that the verbal agreement between the vendor for these professional services was $450,000. However, Fulton County was billed 4 times that amount. Subsequently, the department possessed no verifiable means of on-site support that could be used to validate the invoices submitted for payment. If that doesn't shock you, I'm not sure what will. So I guess why am I sharing all of this with you tonight is my glasses tonight. First, I want you to understand, if you haven't already known, that spending is out of control in Fulton County. Secondly, their attempt to increase the local option sales tax for their portion from 5% to 35% is frankly absurd. Finally, when it comes to elections, you need to run your own municipal elections for a host of other reasons. Thank you for listening and everything you're doing for the Roswell community.
Thank you, Matt. And, yeah. So, just as a little maybe lead, I hope that all Roswell residents, all Fulton County residents, all North Fulton residents are paying attention to loss. That's local option sales tax negotiations, which happen every 10 years. And you mentioned it there at the end, Matt. I hope the next time you come up, you'll mention it a lot. Because I think if the residents of Roswell and our sister cities find out what's potentially could happen there, I think you'll find cause célèbre for outrage. So please pay attention to that as a resident. Yes, there is. Councilmember Christine Hall, thank you. Would you like to announce about this? Because November 21st, right? So just so happens that the North Fulton, actually, we've invited all the cities of Fulton County, all 15, but with the excellent mind of the mayor of John Creek, John Bradbury, we're going to have a town hall right here in 3 weeks on Wednesday, September 21st at 7 p.m. about loss. We're going to invite the Fulton County Commissioners. We're inviting the mayors and city councils from all 15 cities. It's a North Fulton kind of mayor thing started, thanks to John Bradbury from Johns Creek. But we ask that you come, and we ask that you bring your friends and neighbors, because you need to know what's happening about loss. It's a $4 billion equation, and the consequences are gigantic to Roswell, Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, Milton, Johns Creek, Mountain Park, to all of us residents. And so it's very, very important that you as residents, please come. Wednesday, September 24th, 7 p.m., Town Hall for loss. Thanks, Christine, for reminding me of that. Yes, sir, I see you. Yes, sir, you've been waiting. I apologize. Welcome.
Yes, Jason Frazier, 485 Hardscrabble Road, and I just wanted to make sure I went after Matt because I thought my presentation might piggyback off his pretty well. So again, wow, that does show up pretty nice. I thought maybe it'd be too small to read. So I picked up a new hobby this year, and that is looking at Fulton County voter rolls. So similar to Matt, I have seen a tremendous amount of bloat and wasteful spending in Fulton County, and I hope you guys can sever as many ties with Fulton County as you can and run your own elections. But if you didn't have enough reason before, I'll give you a few reasons and things that I've stumbled upon. So looking at Fulton County voter rolls, and I'm just one guy looking at a big long Excel spreadsheet, I identified almost 13,000 duplicate registrations. So that are people that that might be registered twice, 3 times. I even found one guy registered 5 times in Fulton County. So we get charged based on the number of people on the voter rolls. One guy registered 5 times. And per the math, right now Fulton County is charging about $50 per person, but if we have a runoff election, that'll be, give or take, $65 per person. That one guy was registered 4 extra times. This isn't voter suppression to get rid of his extra ability to vote 4 more times. We're just trying to let him just vote once. So just trying to cut cost, and I think you guys can do a lot to help cut cost if you just run your own elections and sever your ties with Fulton County. So again, some of the other fun things that I found are, I pulled out some of my stats on, specifically on Roswell. So on those duplicate registrations, I found 175 people in Roswell that were registered twice. I don't blame the individual. Fulton County should be double checking whether you get married and you have a maiden name and then you have a married name, or whether it's Lee Hills and Lee Hill. You know, there's a lot of typos, if you want to call them typos, but after 13,000, I started scratching my head and thinking maybe these aren't typos, but we'll let you determine. I'm happy to share my list. So then I started looking at some other things like missing date of birth. I found 14 people in Roswell that didn't have a date of birth on their registration. You're supposed to say how old you are to register to vote. Fulton County decided to register 482 people without a date of birth. 87 of them had voted. I don't know if they're 12 years old, nor does Fulton County, but they still let them vote. I have a problem with that. But now, I mean, one of the good things is some of these might be legitimate people. They send them a challenge letter. If they update it, if they're a real person, they can still continue to vote. So all is well. But a lot of these people ended up being a duplicate registration. Maybe they got halfway through registration, whatever happened, they just registered again. So I saw several of them like that. Another fun fact is I found 2012 people that were at missing address streak. Where do they live? Fulton County doesn't know either, but they still register them. We're paying for that. I found 9 people that were missing a first name, last name, or both first and last name. One guy, literally named Missing, voted in the January runoff. I don't know how they checked his ID, but his name on the voter rolls is Missing. I've got a problem with that. I mean, some of this stuff you just can't make up, but Fulton County's good at making things up. I found over 1,000 people at business addresses, whether the UPS stores, FedEx stores, MARTA stations, gas stations, you name it, you can find people there. That might not seem like a big deal, but if I'm running for election and all of my buddies live in Alpharetta, by God, put them at the UPS store and I win. So it is very important to be at your house. And you can have a mailing address at the UPS store, you just can't live at the UPS store. It's kind of a tiny place. All right, so moving along, one of my favorite ones is Lee Street Southwest. I stumbled upon this street and found 54 issues, and it is a small industrial street. It's not a big street, but 36 of these issues on that street were purely made up addresses. I looked at tax records. There was never a house at a lot of these addresses. One of the spots on that street, Google Maps showed to be on an overpass. There's never been a house on that overpass. There's never been any of these houses down that street, so Fulton County graciously removed them. But one of the folks down there actually voted down removing those. But they will remove the 36 people at imaginary addresses. So after I found that, I just started digging around and found 71 more imaginary addresses on some other streets, and I'm sure I'll find hundreds more as time permits. So again, if you look at the total dollars, if we have a runoff election at $65 a person, by God, I have saved our tax dollars a tremendous amount. And I hope that Roswell will run your own elections. You guys have a GIS system. I hope you can compare addresses or let me help you, teach you how to do it. And if you have a Lee Street in Roswell that's an imaginary
Thank you,
street,
Mr. Frazier. Thank you, sir.
all right.
Thanks so much.
I hope you'll look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your time. Yes, sir, in the blue striped shirt.
Yes, sir.
Welcome. Thank you. Please share with us your name and where you live.
I'm Forrest Buchanan, and I live in Horseshoe Bend. I also voted and supported Mr. Zapata. I guess the first issue that I have with you is the bond issue. The information that I have is that you do not have an option on the property. We do not know how tall it's going to be or how many parking spots. My idea is that you don't throw it on the property owners, that if you use it, you pay for it, that it should be an income bond based on the parking fees that we charge and let that pay off the bonds. Also, it should go to the park. You have improvements. The parks look great to me, but we don't know what, at least the information that I've been able to obtain, we don't know what you're going to do for the parks. I live on East Roswell. Please, please don't give us any more apartment buildings. We are up to here with apartment buildings. They add nothing to the neighborhood. Been mentioned a few times, but I was wondering if you could get together with the other mayors in North Fulton and try to resurrect Milton County. Fulton County has, on every election, they're not hours late, they are days late getting their votes in. The incompetence of Fulton County is just incalculable, that all our tax money is just wasted on what I believe is a jobs program downtown. You've got to, it's going to take a lot of votes to get it. The state has to approve it on a vote. And you could most probably get Sandy Springs, I'm sure, and you could most probably get Buckhead, because it seems like they're really tired of the city of Atlanta. And the money that we would have, all of our cities have already produced police departments, fire departments, parks. We've already done that. So the only thing you'd have to do is put the judicial system in, a jail, although we have a pretty big jail here, and an election. Please resurrect Milton County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Mr. Sharp. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. MK Sharp, 8635 Steeplechase Drive. I've lived in Roswell 39 years. This is my first time to have an open mic night to speak. And I just appreciate the opportunity to raise the issue about trash along the roadways, especially Highway 140. I realize Georgia 400 and Highway 140 is the purview of Georgia Department of Transportation, but I think it reflects on the whole city when people drive through here. And an example is going down Holcomb Bridge Road, where there's an 8-foot path, which is great for bicycles and people walking around Holcomb Bridge, but the kudzus coming over the walls, the sidewalks are getting covered up. I think the state needs to do a better job of mowing, trimming weeds, and generally improving the safety of people that walk and bike on those paths. I've always thought this is the best place in the country to live, and I'm very proud to tell people I live in Roswell, but I do think we could do a lot better job of using your influence as mayor and council to get the state to keep the roadways cleaner. I think it really reflects on all of us. Thank you. Yes.
Well, we're writing a note because we want to follow up. Tell us the location on the kudzu that you're referring to.
Well, right around Holcomb Bridge Middle School, back to the toward 400, so that would be west. But that whole pathway along there, there's a wall outside Horseshoe Bend where I live, and you know, it's kind of fallen down. I realize that's probably not the state's responsibility to. A lot of those, there's a lot of weeds, those thistles that grow up when things get overgrown. You can actually, you know, a young child walking along there, some of that stuff would, you know, if they get into it, be scratched and bleeding. So it just needs to be cleaned up. And I don't know about along 400 because I haven't been there to walk or ride bicycles, but especially along 400 on where, 140 where it's Holcomb Bridge Road. That's pretty.
Thanks, Mr. Sharp.
Cans, bottles, broken glass, and so forth.
Thank
you for the opportunity
No.
to speak at open mic.
Thank you. I can't believe it's been the first time in 39 years. Glad you did it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jason Sabatino again from Horseshoe Bend, and Kent kind of, in a way, stole one of my topics. I've also been waiting for an open mic night. It just happened to be I was here. And I want to make a couple of comments before my issue. So first off, so happy to see that we have an economic development director here. As we've said earlier, Marcelo was a big advocate for that, and caught a lot of grief early on in his career for it, but so glad that we have that. And it really kind of plays into the whole creation or activation, I should say, of this Roswell Development Authority. That's something I had a conversation with Mayor Wood about many years ago when we were talking about economic development and how to help East Roswell. And I really wish that this RDA had kind of come forward before or instead of this East Roswell Economic Activity Committee, because that committee was really just making recommendations, and the RDA, I know, has the power to actually do things. And had that RDA been in effect under the previous council and previous mayors, maybe we'd be a little bit further down the road. But welcome and thank you. So to piggyback on what Mr. Sharp just said, I want to highlight that one of the most difficult jobs, I'm sure, that happens with economic development is inviting people into the city and selling the city and getting them to invest in the city. And something that has bothered me for a long time is how terrible our gateways look when you enter the city. I've mentioned this to a couple of you up there. I'm just kind of want to make sure we're on the record tonight. You know, when you come off Georgia 400, it is absolutely atrocious. Every time I come off the highway, there's trash everywhere. The grass is overgrown. There's panhandlers asking you for money. My daughter's telling me to roll the window up because she doesn't want somebody coming up and asking for money. And I've mentioned this to various people at the city. I've mentioned this, you know, to anybody that'll listen, and I just see it continuing to happen. And when I pull off the exit, getting off into Alpharetta, the grass is mowed, everything looks nice. When I get off in Roswell, I mean, I don't know anybody that's like gets off and says, wow, this is a great place. We've got all these sidewalks that were put in years ago with these wonderful street lamps, and there's weeds growing up through them. And the people that own the businesses along the street around these gateways, they're not always taking care of their landscaping, and it looks like trash. So in order to get to this wonderful, beautiful downtown area we have, you have to peel this turd off the top of the, off the city, and it's terrible. You come in from Gwinnett and you cross the river, it's the same thing, all up and down Holcomb Bridge Road. There's just it's trash, it's overgrown grass, it's sidewalks that aren't maintained. And yeah, it may be GDOT, it may be other agencies, that are responsible for it, but ultimately it's the city. And I really feel like regardless of whose responsibility is, if it's not being taken care of by whoever's supposed to, why can't we get some city landscape people to periodically, take care of it? We have all these wonderful police officers that drive up and down the streets every day, wonderful employees in the city that drive up and down the streets every day. When they see something, they should report it. I report stuff through the Roswell app all the time, and generally it gets taken care of eventually, which is great. But I'm just one person, and I think there's a lot that could happen to benefit the city and East Roswell if we just paid a little bit more attention. The last thing I wanted to mention with my last 50 seconds or so is we're coming up on the fall season, and East Roswell Park is about to be activated with a lot of softball and other activities that go on after dark. And I'd just like to ask, and I've brought this to the city's attention over the last several years, that if there's budget, if there's opportunity for us to tune the field lighting on the softball fields, it would be very much appreciated by the residents of Horseshoe Bend and those that live around the park. Those lights shine. They're not, in my opinion, aimed correctly, and we get lights so bright on the backs of our homes that are hundreds of feet off the park that we can make shadow puppets. That's how bright the lights are, and they're just shining in our windows at night. Now, granted, the lights do turn off by a certain period of time at night.
Thanks,
but
Mr. Sabatino.
If we could get those looked at, I'd appreciate it.
We
Thank
got
you.
it. Yes, sir. Already got a head nod from the back on it. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Welcome again.
Thank you, council. My name is Claire Snedeker, 765 Whitehall Way. A couple of points. I wanted to be a voice of support for the progress that Lucia Frazier has been requesting, and did some homework on the code improvements for sustainability for our food chain, our local opportunity to participate in that. I think anything that we can do that diversifies our food chain's reliance is important, and is really needs to get some attention. There's been a lot of really great points tonight that I'm looking forward to the follow-up on. And on that item for Lucia, I want to just mention, I hear that the land survey costs tend to be a roadblock in being able to move forward with some of those food supply chain issues, and bringing some agricultural that's sustainable and integrated to the fabric of our community. So I'd ask for you to look at that as part of what, it's probably in her list, but the land survey costs seem to be an impediment to what we're trying to accomplish there. I also wanted to just echo the comments about the party houses. I hear it more from others that party houses are cropping up and are problematic. They're making our residential areas, they're just causing a lot of issues in the residential areas. And so I'd encourage you to look at what other cities have done on that, and try to get active on putting in place what we feel is needed for our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Snedeker. Thank you. There's a yellow, is that yes? Welcome, how are you? Glad you are coming up to come talk to us. Very exciting.
I live 5 Hardscrabble Road, 11 years old, and I came to say, well, got this nice piece of land to build a park there, and we couldn't wait to be able to walk there with friends and family. But soon the kids that are my age will grow up, start driving, and move away. So while we're younger and playful, this park could allow us to really get there with no danger, have parties, get-togethers, fun activities. So, build this park. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know it took a lot of courage to come up there. You did a great job. Well done. All right, any other comments? Thank you, everyone, one and all, very, very much. If there are no more comments this time, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. The open forum of August 29th is adjourned, and council will now go into closure. Thank you.